So I'll call to order the meeting at 7:01 p.m. And we have the approval of the agenda, and I believe we're going to be getting an amendment. So I believe I'm correct on that. So I'll look to someone to make that amendment. Councillor Clark, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. You want to go ahead and amend the agenda?
For release of decisions, correct?
Oh, no.
I'm not sure what.
Okay. So I understood that you were going to amend the agenda to put some motions on for the topic that you and Lisa are doing later in the meeting.
Correct. So
Is that correct?
Yes.
So if
would
you
you like me?
Yeah. Do it now. Does that make sense?
Okay. So would you like me to read all the recommendations now?
Yeah, just if you can, we'll move it by Councillor Clark with a seconder.
Dennis Beck has his hand up.
Dennis, go ahead, please.
Your Worship, I believe that we can proceed without amending the agenda because the item is the parking survey results, and they're up for receipt, and the motions that Councillor Clark is proposing to bring forward simply flow from that discussion item. So I don't think that that will require an amendment to the agenda. I think we're fine without it.
Okay, I'll take your guidance on that. So, yeah, go ahead. Okay, so we'll move it, Councillor
I'll move it.
Clark and
And I'll second
Councillor
that.
Wilder. Okay, that the agenda for the regular council meeting, May 9th, 2022 be approved as circulated. Any discussion with that, council? Seeing none, I'll look to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And I note that it carries and in the affirmative. Okay. We're now on to the adoption of the minutes of regular council meeting of April 25th, 2022. And we'll get a mover and a seconder, please.
So moved.
Councillor Drake
Second.
moving, Councillor Clark seconding, that the minutes from the regular council meeting held April 25th, 2022 be adopted is on the floor. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll look to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And I note that it carries in the affirmative. Okay. We have no delegations and no presentations. We have no reports and we have no items under reports. So we have the items from the mayor's report, and then we will then go to the Belcarre parking survey. So it's my pleasure to be able to talk about four things. Quickly, I was able to attend the Chamber of Commerce event on April 30th with my wife Sylvia, and we joined other mayors and community leaders and business people to support the outstanding work of the Chamber of Commerce. Many of the winners that night for their Business Excellence Award spoke about the ongoing challenges to keeping their businesses operating during COVID, and even now they talked about the challenges. They thanked and acknowledged the work done by the Chamber, and they talked about the work done by the Chamber to support their businesses and in particular their people. Many of the winners of those Excellence Awards spoke on that topic in some way. The Hike for Hospice is taking place on Sunday, May 29th, 2022. And I have it on the agenda tonight. Obviously, it's something that's close to people in this community, but in particular, it's a way of trying to encourage people to be able to participate in the community. And we agreed with the hospice to do that. It starts at 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Port Moody Civic Center. And it helps promote the importance of hospice care and raise much needed funds for the end of life care and grief support in our community. I am attending and would love if members of council or the community would like to come. We've had one person take us up on that offer. Councillor Wilder is going to join, and anybody else, you don't need to commit tonight. You actually have a little time, but please feel free to come if you'd like. And it's both a good one to support, and it's also one that's dear to many people's hearts in the community. I wanted to just, my next item was to talk about the the lawn watering regulations from Metro Vancouver. I want to thank Paula Richardson, who's not here tonight. And that's why we're lucky to have Connie Esposito here doing the work in her absence. But Paula arranged for the updated watering regulations for 2022 from Metro to go up on the website. I won't go into details, but it's up there right now. And it's actually very user-friendly, so you can find out what in fact is happening, what will happen in phase 1, and if we do go to phase 2, what will happen there. And the restrictions for us, we're in a good position, and I want to just refer to Stuart Novak, who's our contact person. There's a big list. It's a very easily accessible thing, and it has for every municipality in Metro a contact person, and Stuart is our contact person, and he's going to be working to provide more information and help to field questions. And most importantly, he will be able to talk about how we're going to do things in the village of Belcarre. We're extremely lucky that because of both our circumstances and how things are, that we actually, where people start out with an education and working with people, we actually rely on that heavily because of the fact that in addition to this is pointed at Metro Vancouver Water, but we also have, many of us have the ability to use wells that are there. So often if someone is watering on a day that's not expected, it's actually not that they're not following the rules, but they have a water source. And Metro Vancouver, if you go on, talks about the different parts. So it's really important in our community that that first part, education and working with people, that we do a good job on that so that we stay together as a community. And Stuart is going to be doing his usual good work on that and connecting with people. And I want to just finish off. It's another area that Stuart's actually part of too. We've had recently the Mike Farnworth, who is the BC Public Safety Minister and the Solicitor General, last week released that they are moving to an automated alert system, and it will be ready to use. They did a test last week on Wednesday, and it'll be ready to warn British Columbians of spring flooding and summer wildfires. And it will look to do this on the basis of imminent threats or imminent danger. And so they are moving away from what were sometimes more blanket ones without specificity and just more put out there. And what they want to do is allow municipality to be able to work and to tailor, make a alert that works for them. The province reserves the right to both support and take over if it gets to a point. But the wildfire alerts will be coming out a little closer, and that will help us. And Stuart will, in his job as the emergency person, will help to in the coming weeks, will help to put more information out there as it comes. But I wanted to make sure I acknowledge the work that he does on both those files. And that completes my report. So if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to take them. If not, I'd be equally pleased to hand over to Councillor Clark and Councillor Wilder for their work on the Belcarre parking survey. So over to both of you and whoever's going to lead off. Thank you.
I think Councillor Clark's going to lead off on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Okay, so let's talk some more about parking, everybody's favorite subject. It looks like every year we have a meeting that we talk about this. So first, I'd like to highlight the survey that was done with the help of Brooke Pooney. It was up online for about a couple of weeks. There was notices on the bus stops, and we tried our best to communicate to the residents. It went as well to our village email list. So I would like to once again highlight the importance of being signed up to our village email list, so you will know about surveys like that or any other things happening here in the village. So first I'd like to say we had a great turnout for the survey. We had a total of 152 residents that participated. So that was really good. We've done some different things on parking for the past few years. At some point, we went to a large part of the village being permitted only, leaving other parts that would still allow visitors. But as we know, after COVID hit and parks, Metro Vancouver Parks started charging parking lot, it started charging for parking on their parking lot. That just did not help with the problem that we've been having for over 40 years, I would say. So we had a lot of overflow from that as well. This year we have another challenge, which is, I don't know if everybody saw, but Bunsen Lake is working now with a permit system. So you will have to reserve a spot to go to Bunsen Lake. That's another concern for me, that it might overflow some of that traffic that won't be able to go in there down to Belcara. So based on the response from the survey and on the percentage of people that supported this and that, it looks like, according to the survey, we have a very good support in the village to keep the restrictions. And obviously there is some areas of concerns when it comes to permits and a few other things. So I'm going to read some of the motions that we're going to put forward today for parking. And please, Councillor Lisa Wilder, jump in anytime that you feel that you have to. Okay, so the first motion would be the report to be received for information. Motion number 2 would be, it reads that further to the authorities delegated to staff pursuant to Section 8 of the Village Belcara Traffic and Parking Bylaw, number 518218, the following guidelines be adopted to assist staff in managing the parking permit system. So these, I'm not suggesting any amendments to the bylaw because we don't have to have any amendments to that bylaw because it was done in a way that it would allow us to do permit or no permit. However, I would like to set some guidelines to help staff to manage the permits, which was one of the concerns that we saw the most through the research. So the first one would be A, residential parking permits to be issued to owners and residents of property in Belcara for each vehicle they have registered to a Belcara address. We're talking here about the sticker program. Okay, so each resident to each household, they might have sometimes, I don't know, 5 cars, 6 cars, 3 cars. So they will be able to come into the village hall and ask for the sticker to be placed on their cars. You will probably have to, show them that you live in that address and that car is assigned to that address. So that fixed the problem because as some people felt that the village wasn't issuing enough stickers. So that will cover that area. B, guest parking permits to be issued to owners, residents as required for use by their guests or tradesmen. And for the tradesmen one, we would do with such permits to expire at the end of the respective calendar year. So this would be specifically to, if you have a seasonal worker coming in every week. So let's say you have a cleaning person or you have someone dealing with your garden. So, and they have to park obviously legally somewhere on the road to accomplish that work. Now you could go to the village hall and ask for a permit that will be attached to that plate number, to that specific vehicle that comes work in your house. Please, Councillor Wilder, if you want to jump in.
Thank you. Some of these tradespeople, though, we have an issue with because there could be many vehicles attached. Like if you've got Molly Maids, for example, that comes in. Molly Maids, it's not the same Molly Maids. So that's the only issue I have with that particular one. I just think it should be like a permit for Molly Maids. That's just one example, for example. And also we were talking about having passes, residential passes for residences that were annual passes, 2021, 2022, 2023, not just trades. Are we on the same page with that?
So I was thinking about that. The only thing about us doing this with the guests permits, right? Which is not the tradesman person, the tradesperson. So with the guest permits is that staff, it would create quite a bit of work in the office to, we laminate them and try to do that every year. So, it would be perhaps a better way to start off this way and see if we have problems in the future, we could switch that and do yearly. But, my intention here was to do something that worked for the residents, but also wouldn't overwhelm the village hall, because
Right.
maybe
I don't
then-
want to overwhelm the village hall by
Yeah.
any means. I don't want to overwhelm the staff. I also
Yeah.
don't want to have passes out there that don't have a year on them, that they're just being passed off to people, and then, oh, I lost my pass.
So
know?
yeah, so then I know what you mean.
We
So
talked
you
about
know,
that.
yeah. So that's what I have here for now, but I'll go through the rest and then we
Okay,
can sort
go
of go
ahead.
back and do any amendments if we wish. So that would be one. So that would take care, of the permit. So if you have, if you need, some households will need 6 passes, some household will just need 2 passes, we never know, but that it gives that leverage to deal with that specific concern. So C on motion 2 would be contractors and subcontractors to be issued temporary guest parking permits to accompany the traffic management plan that they are required to submit with the building permit application, with such permits to be linked to a vehicle license plate number. So that the village already has, if you do a big renovation or your building, we already have a traffic management plan that is done through the village as well. So that will also help in that specific situation. D, Coquitlam Search and Rescue personnel, as well as Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department personnel to be permitted to park in the residential parking zones based on vehicle identification plates without the addition of a guest parking permit. This is something that the village already is doing. So if a member from the fire department lives in Enmore, wants to come visit Belcarra, we talked about this a bit in the past, is that, it is my view at least that they should be able to, because they're very important volunteers. And I would like to also extend this to Coquitlam Search and Rescue, which they do great work with Sasamat Volunteer Fire Department as well. They're one of their partners there. So I thought it would be nice to extend that to them. And if this passes, then my sense is that Coquitlam Search and Rescue, as well as the Volunteer Fire Department, will get a letter from Belcarra Municipality saying that this is happening. E, utility companies to be eligible to acquire a guest parking permit for their use while working in the village of Belcarra. So sometimes we have BC Hydro coming in once a month to read meters and all that, and Fortis. So usually they assign one person to that municipality to come read all that stuff. So those people will also get a permit, to be able to complete that work here. And F, licensed divers be permitted to acquire a guest parking permit subject to providing their diving license number along with their vehicle license plate number. So a concern of mine and Councillor Wilder as well that we brought up in the past is that the diver's pass, and I saw quite a bit of feedback on the survey about the diver's pass. As I said a couple of meetings ago, we already issued those divers passes. It's usually a very small group, and when I live, my property backs onto Whiskey Cove, so that's the main spot for them to dive, and so I see them coming and going. So they would be able to get that permit as well, and it will be attached to it will be linked to their plate, and they would have to show that they are in case a diver, right? They have to show identification. And that would be the motion. So that I have prepared for tonight. So we will take care of majority of the concerns when it comes to permits. So Councillor Wilder, I don't know if you have any additional comments.
No, I'm good. I'm good with everything. Thank you so much for all your work that you've done on this as well, Councillor Clark. I think this has been an extensive exercise, I'm going to call that. And some people think, oh, gosh, can't we stop talking about parking, for heaven's sakes? But we have been talking about it, but it was on hold. And we promised to bring it back and it's taken this long to do so. And we really appreciate the efforts and that the residents have, the time that they've taken and the responses that they've contributed to. It's been very enlightening to both of us, as well as I'm sure everybody else that's reading them all. We want to thank everybody for just taking the time to do this. It's going to make a big difference for us. It's made a big difference for, like, when we made that rash decision at the very beginning, and it was going to be for a short time, and then it got extended because of COVID, and then here we are. So now people have had a chance to live with it, decide what they want to do with it. And yeah, I really appreciate everybody's comments. It's been very enlightening for Councillor Clark and myself. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Wilder, and thank you, Councillor Clark. And we'll move to Councillor Drake if we can, who has his hand up. Councillor Drake, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enormous amount of work's gone into this. And certainly you had a tremendous response. I mean, it's a topic that obviously is on people's mind. I thought it was very interesting going through the results, and I appreciate the way they were analyzed and laid out. It does make it very clear, as we've heard at different times, that there are multiple Belcarras when it comes to parking, and that people should not assume because their home is quiet that all their neighbors have a similar situation, and vice versa. People that find that they have real challenges shouldn't assume the whole village is facing that. So I think I agree with the recommendation to retain the practice. I think the days when we're not going to see a significant number of people coming into Belcarra, certainly on season, are now long gone. We saw a huge growth when COVID hit and people stopped traveling. I think it was in the 30% range for the parks. That is not going to change anytime soon. So I appreciate the work that's been done here. I do have a question. Can you explain to me precisely which of these are going to be permanent and which of these will have to be renewed periodically? I missed that portion. Thank you.
Okay, so according to the resident stickers, right, that you get for your car on your specific plate number, those are not to be renewed. The only permits that I'm suggesting to have an expire date, it's permits for tradespeople. So construction, all those type of, and even for the divers. Okay, I guess, do we have this here? Providing they're available. We don't have this for the divers now, but I guess we could do it if we want to. But yeah, so it would just be for basically non-residents. So then those passes don't get lost. So if I have someone coming to cut my lawn here, and they're coming for, let's say there's no expiring on their passes, and then all of a sudden I decide to change contractors or whatnot, then that pass would still be valid forever, pretty much, because there's no expire date. So if you do it like that, you might lose control to permits that are being issued to non-residents. So that was the intention on renewing those every year. And it doesn't have to be for the season; it can be for the year, for instance. But it shouldn't be a permit that is forever, like the residence permit. The gas passes will be the same way; will have no expiry date. Does that answer your question, Councillor Drake?
I guess if I could follow up through the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair, I guess I see the motion. I appreciate the way it's been laid out. So I understand that it seemed to me that guest parking permits is the whole category. So if I want to give it to anyone, they're probably not a resident in Belcarra, you're saying those will have to be renewed every year. Is that right? Or are there exceptions? Are there guest passes that are in perpetuity?
The guest passes would be in perpetuity. What would not be in perpetuity will be the tradesperson pass. So there is a small amendment from what you're reading. And Dennis has his hand
B,
up.
I would suggest then that B needs to be reworked if that's your intention, because it seems to suggest all guest parking permits would expire. I appreciate it's two different sentences, but the way it's worded,
Yeah.
it sounds like they're all going to expire at the end of the calendar year. And I have to say personally, I would prefer that, but if that's not your intent,
Yeah.
you should make it clear.
Okay, Dennis back has his hand up, so
Yeah, Dennis.
maybe
if
he
you
has
could
some
go ahead.
clarity for it.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Dennis. Thank you. You're,
You're eloquent, but muted, Dennis.
yeah,
You're muted, Dennis.
your finest speech we're not hearing.
Well, yeah, but can I find those words again? I thought I'd unmuted it, but it didn't click. If it's council's desire to, for the guest passes to be, to run, well, not in perpetuity, but to run year over year and not have expiry date. And they want the tradespeople to have a guest pass that'll expire year by year. I think it's best if we just separate that motion into two parts,
Mhm.
and that'll take care of that. That's the simplest way.
Okay,
And we can handle that administratively here.
okay, good. All right. Counselor Wilder, thank you, Dennis. Counselor
Thank-
Wilder, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I would just like through the chair for Dennis to just repeat that.
Okay, I can do that. So the way that it'll read is guest parking permits to be issued to owners, residents as required for use by their guests, period. And then separate out that next part and make it a separate clause to say guest parking permits to be issued to tradesmen with such permits to expire at the end of the respective calendar year. So guest passes generally for residents do not have expiry date, but for tradesperson people, it'll expire at the end of the calendar year.
Okay. I guess this is where we're still struggling a little bit about this because I still have issues with the guest passes myself, and I know that I've heard that some people just take their guest passes and just give them to their friends, and they just like willy-nilly give them out, what have you. I've also noticed my personal ones do not have a year on them, but I've noticed some other ones that were issued have a year expire, December 2022. And I didn't know where that came from, what have you. I think it's more administration work if we end up having an expiry date per se. I think that's more of an administration issue, and I think we don't need more administration costs, right? When you start having passes that expire per se, I think each of us as residents, we know who our guests are. I don't think and I know who my tradesperson is. And I don't know that I even really need an expiry date on it. It's like, I've got the tree people coming. They're registered with the hall already. I've got, my son is here visiting from Alberta. I've given him a guest pass, but he went back to Alberta with it. So my pass is gone. It's gone. I keep asking him to mail it back to me, but I still haven't seen it back. You know, I don't know that expiry dates even have to, that's where I'm really having an issue with that, because I don't want more staff work. I don't want more administration time costs involved with this. And that's why I'm thinking, do we really need an expiry date? If somebody has the tree people coming and they have a pass, they just go up and the tree people go up, or the homeowner goes up and says, or whatever. Or I've got Molly Maid who comes every week. Not that I have Molly Maid, but you know, someone has Molly Maid every week. And they're different cars. That's the other thing. There's different cars that come by all the time. You have, even the tree people are different cars. They're not the same license plate that comes up. So I just find that just a little bit onerous that way. There has to be there's got to be something really simple when it comes to that, or, you know, our bylaw people know if you've got a tree person there that's trimming trees and got a Molly Maid person on the driveway, or they've got, or, you know, one's lawn mowing or what have you, they know who they are. I'm not sure where the I'm not sure where the fit is, I guess. I'm not sure what the right words are here. We realize that we need to have, make sure that people that come in here are legitimately coming in here. If that's what everybody wants, if everybody wants permit parking only, we can't make it so onerous on our tradespeople either, that they can't come in here because they're not going to come here. They're just not going to come here. Why would they come here if it's going to make it so onerous on them that they can't come here to work?
But
And they have to have a
that's not,
pass and they got everything. So, anyways, I'm speaking too much now, so I think I've used up my time.
so Mayor Ross, if I may, I can make
Yeah,
some comments.
Sure,
Okay.
but before we do, because you may want to comment on that piece, but we correctly, or I think there's support for a separation between those two, right?
Mhm.
Dennis had
Yeah.
indicated a separation. So there's
Yes.
support for that. Where there isn't consensus is what we should do on that. But we agree
Yeah.
on council that there's support for the splitting of those two.
Yeah,
Dennis, and that's what you had indicated, correct?
Separation between residents, pass,
And
guest
trades.
passes, and trades.
Tradespeople. Okay, so we've got consensus on now. Now we'll go to Councillor Clark to see if she can help guide us.
so thank you, Mayor Ross. So this is the type of problem we're trying to solve. So if you have the same person coming to cut your lawn, it would make sense for that person to have their own permits that they can take home with them. That's attached to, it's linked to their plate number. If you have different contractors coming in every week to do the same work, then I would say the best suggestion I have in situations like that is for you to give them one of your gas passes to use while they're doing the work, and then take that gas pass back before they leave. It's never going to be perfect, you know. We also have concerns. It's like, oh, you know, I like the regulations, but I don't want my friends to get tickets when they come here. Well, the only way to avoid that would be to remember to put the passes on the windshield. So if you don't have, I'm trying to solve like a problem that is like, okay, if it's the same person coming every week, you have a good solution, which is like they have their own passes they can take home. But if you have different people, then you should just use your guest passes that you would have in case, and then just have to take them back at the end. That's the best solution I can come up with, because if we depend on, the bylaw officer knows this, knows that, well, yeah, we think that, but it can be not always the case. And if we leave this kind of stuff for up to the bylaw officer to figure it out, that might not be fair. So it needs to sort of be really clearly laid out what the intention is and what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
Okay,
Throw my hand up here.
Councillor Wilder.
I have my hand up.
I've got Councillor Snell, and then I've got
He's
Councillor
first.
Wilder. So Councillor Snell, if you want to go ahead, please, and then
Yes.
Councillor Wilder.
Yes, thank you. I'm supportive of having passes that expire at the end of the year. Which classes, either guest or trades or whatever. The risk we run if we have too many passes out there, we'll end up with more passes in circulation than there are legitimate users for them. So I do think that there's a valid case that the residents and their vehicles, in perpetuity, that's fine. I think tradespeople, seasonal, then they run out, and we can always change the colours from year by year. But I do get concerned about the number of passes that are floating out around that. I accept that people are going to drive off with them, and you can lose one that way. But I think there should be a way of cancelling a pass as well, so that if for instance a guest pass has gone wandering out of the area, okay, and it's gone wandering out of the area, go to the office and cancel it. And if people know that tickets, that passes can get cancelled, then they might not be so flippant over the care of them. We talk about the work of the administration, but I think there's probably more work involved in administration by the issuing of tickets from genuine tradespeople or visitors if you have a diligent bylaw officer, can go by ticketing things that really one can see should not be ticketed. And I know there have been several companies that have had, in fact, to get lawyers involved to get tickets waived. One in particular was a lawn mowing service that had people were cutting the lawn out the back, a trailer on the truck out the front full of mowing clippings and everything else. They got a ticket. They got several tickets throughout the community and had to fight it through spending money with lawyers. The other sort of people that come here, for instance, I noticed that we've got utility companies. Well, and obviously a utility truck in the middle of the street with cranes and poles and everything, no one's going to interfere with them going about their business. But I often see a little white, very plain vehicle parked at the end of the street. It's not blocking anything, but legitimately parked, and the guy is wandering up and down the street reading gas meters with his little iPad, and he can be doing that. He might be, who knows whose vehicle is. He could be using his own personal vehicle and getting mileage for it. So I think, I think that if more discretion is applied, then that is probably the easiest way of cutting back on the administrative time. So okay. I'll leave it at that. So I support both motions on the table, that we receive it, and also that the second motion, I would accept that in its, I would support that in its entirety. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Snell and Councillor Drake. And we're
thank you.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's a huge topic. We're obviously going to spend a bit of time because, as Carolina says, no matter what you do, you will have dissatisfied clients, and some that wish that we had done more, and some that wish we'd done less, as is obvious from the survey. So I agree with Councillor Snell that I think there should be an expiry date on these. The question is, how do you make it simple? And I would just suggest, rather than having everything come up at the end of the year, if these things were issued, had a date put on them, and said they expired 1 year after the date, then you're not going to see 300 of these things come up on January the 3rd. They just come up as they come up. And in addition, then when something strange happens to a permit, it's gone. It's only going to be around for another few months before it expires anyway, and we don't have to worry about it. It's very obvious on the, it can be very obvious on the form that it's no longer valid, and people will make mistakes, but very few, I suspect. I do wonder about the wording that suggests, does this suggest I can walk into the hall and say, I need 10 guest passes? I don't agree with that. We had 2 in the past. I see we had some people complain. Personally, I would say, look, go to 3 and then charge some nominal amount after 3, just so we don't encourage people to get too many of these. Because the one downside we have, if we don't have an expiry date and we end up with so many of these out here that it becomes, an attractive alternative to paying for parking at the park, we're going to face a problem. And I would rather it took care of itself by simply expiring than our having to manage it. And look, there may be people that have a legitimate need for more than 3 of these guest passes, but they should, I see no problem with asking them to pay a fee beyond 3 or offer an explanation. And with one last comment, I appreciate it's very difficult to administer the ticketing process, but we should be we should encourage staff to be accommodating with respect to legitimate complaints, particularly the first time around. I don't have any sympathy with someone who manages to make a mistake twice, but the first time, if they've got a logical explanation, I would like to see it forgiven. And my experience in regulatory functions is, if you delegate that authority, generally speaking, people make very good decisions, as long as you make it clear you're not looking for 100% compliance. You're looking for all reasonable cases to be dealt with fines. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. And I have Councillor Wilder.
Thank you. In response to the chair, to Councillor Drake and to the audience, I don't think there was ever stipulated, and Councillor Clark might like to correct me on this if I'm not right. I don't think there was ever a stipulation on how many passes were ever issued or could be issued to a household. It was never 2 or 1 or 4. I remember a particular mayor just about jumped over the table out to the audience to say, how many do you want? Do you want 2? Do you want 4? Do you want 6? Do you want 8? I'll give you as many as you want. I remember that as clear as a bell. And it was never determined how many. It ended up being determined in the staff office how many were determined. It was
So-
never determined by council. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
If I may answer that, Mayor Ross.
Yes, you can, as long
So-
as you note that it wasn't me jumping up and off.
It was not
the
you.
chair.
It was not
was never you.
Mayor Ross.
That's
It was
okay.
the previous mayor. It was
That's
the mayor
okay.
that was in for 2018.
No, that's okay.
Since
That's okay.
Then he quit. Yeah. So
Go ahead.
yeah. So the policy is laid out that things like that would be up to the description of the CAO. So council, you're correct. Council never picked a number because when that conversation came into place, I put a motion on the table to defer this to public consultation, and that motion was approved. That's how this whole thing started. But yeah, but there was a talk about 6. There is some households might need more than 2, might need more than 3. I do like Councillor Drake's idea that if you need more than whatever the CAO decides, because right now it's really up to the CAO according to the policy. And if we pass this tonight, would still be up to the CAO choose. So then it could be a CAO call. I would be comfortable with them saying, hey, you can have up to 3 passes a year. If this become a yearly thing, those passes, you can have up to 3 permits a year. But if you want anything more than that, you're going to have to pay for it. I'm okay with that.
I'm just going to interject, but if they have to pay for them, they're going to have to go through council to determine a fee to pay for it. Correct?
Well, we can, yeah, it would be correct because we would have to put that on the fee and charges bylaw.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we can ask, I guess, what would be Dennis, our CEO preference, but it could be like a report coming back to council on this, if you'd like. I do understand the concern about those permits expiring. So if council decides that the best way to go about this is it's actually putting an expiry date for all permits, guest / tradesperson permits, I'm okay with that too. Then I would just look for someone to make an amendment. Although we haven't moved the motion, I guess. So yeah, so that would be my response. Thank you.
So before I go to Councillor Drake, I'll just mention what our previous chief administrative officer said recently on this. She indicated in terms of tradespeople and different people being able to get those passes. She indicated at the time that the utility of having them come and see her and for her to be able to make decisions, but also to talk about how they parked and how they handled those passes. She felt that was quite a good piece. So that in itself, and I'm not saying that carries the day, but that in itself talks about the ability of staff at the end to basically own the process, which probably makes some sense. But why don't we, after Bruce, Dennis may want to talk about his thoughts and they're certainly valued. So we'll go to Councillor Drake, and then Dennis, if you have anything you'd like to comment on, because there's been a couple things about whether we send it to staff, what we do. So it may be useful after Councillor Drake for you to give some thought, particularly to Councillor Clark's and others' desires or thoughts. Okay, so Councillor Drake, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Two quick points. First, I do recall the former mayor's comments around the number of passes. I thought it was simply an indication of how difficult it was to pick a number. He was getting pushback on whatever number he posed, so he waved his hands about and said, "You tell me." I mean, look, it was a new process at the time. I actually think on balance, this process has worked quite well, which is a testament to both staff and our officer. You're never going to issue significantly priced parking tickets and win an infinite number of friends. But this has gone reasonably well. The only suggestion, and I have no way of knowing, I guess the only suggestion, as I made before, I would be quite forgiving on those who come back with a legitimate story. Not many did, but when they do, we should be forgiving those. Not the second time, but the first time, I think we should be so disposed. Secondly, I guess I'll just reiterate that I think in terms of expiry, you don't want them all coming up at once. It would be a unreasonable burden. So by all means, stamp them and have somebody initial them indicating that they're good for 1 year from the date of issuance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. And Dennis.
Well, Your Worship, I can sort of see both sides of the discussion here. One, trying to make it as easy as possible for staff, but we're also trying to make it easy for the residents so that if they're given X number of guest passes, they use them year over year without the need to come into Municipal Hall and get new passes. So you're placing a burden on the guest, on the homeowner, and it also creates some administrative task. Not that that can't be handled, but I'm just saying if the guest passes don't have an expiry date, it makes it easy for both parties. But on the other hand, if there's a concern that having guest passes with no expiry date and an unlimited number are going to get passed around, and as one of the councillors said, we end up with more guest passes than we have people to use it. If council is concerned that that might be a problem, then having expiry date, whether it's the end of the calendar year or as Councillor Drake mentioned, having a rotating, having a random year end, that's the option. But I guess if I were, I'm not really part of the discussion, but if you ask me for my thoughts on which do I think has the most merit, I might be inclined to continue to issue guest passes with no expiry date and really just measure to what extent it becomes a problem. And if it does, then we cancel those and we issue a new form of parking, a guest pass, a different shape, different color with year on it, whatever. Amend the process after we know that after we know what problem we're trying to fix.
Okay. Thank you. Gives our two council leads on that a few thoughts, and council as a whole. So Councillor Wilder, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yep. I absolutely agree with the chair through CAO. I just don't want any more burden put on staff. Zero. I want no more burden put on, but I do know that there's passes out there that have just been delivered out. I've had passes missing. It wasn't me that lost them. My son drove to Calgary. I went to a resident because he didn't get his yet, and then he lost it when he got his car detailed. I didn't do it on purpose, but you know what I mean? That it happens. And that's one of the biggest things that came out of this parking survey was about these passes, how they just go missing, not on purpose, but they just do. So we just need to make sure that people can get them. And I don't think that they should be limited. If somebody needs more than two, that's just my opinion. I don't think that they should be limited, and they should not have staff say, sorry, you can only have two, right? There's many people, well, not many, but there are people down on Marine Avenue, for example, that have dogs, that have guests that come along. And so they need to have passes for their guests when they're going down to their docks. And then they have to run down to their dock or run up to their house or whatever. And an unexpected guest shows up, and it shouldn't be so onerous is what I guess I'm trying to say. It should be easy, and it should not be onerous for our staff at all. Just if somebody needs a pass, let them have, if they need two, if they need three, if they need four. Like 6 is a lot. Sorry, I think 6 is a lot. If you're having a party you just let the village staff know that you're having a party or an event, and I need to section off an area, or I need people to park at the village hall, and please give us permission to do so. Whatever it takes. I mean, we're just a little village, for heaven's sakes. We shouldn't be so City of Vancouver or New York, as somebody said. One of the questions. Just make it easy. Just make it. I don't like the idea that somebody walked up the hall and they were told they could not have a pass. They just couldn't have one. I was like horrified when I read that in the survey. It's like, what? Why not? Like, if you have, there's many places, like I have lots of parking on my property. I'm very thankful for that. Other people don't. There's many people that don't. So, and if you don't, and if you're having visitors for whatever reason, you should be able to give them a guest pass. And I think as residents, we are all responsible adults here. We don't want, and if this is the flavor of what our residents want, no parking in the village, resident only or guest parking only. If this is the flavor, then these residents need to be able to be responsible for the number of passes that they have and that they're giving out. End of, right? They're not going to be abusing them. They just won't abuse them because they want the flavor is that's what they want. If they want resident only parking, they're going to be respectfully using the passes that they are given. If they've got 4, 6, 2, I don't care. They're going to be respectful about what they're using. They're not just going to willy-nilly just hand them out. They're just going to want to make sure that the people that are visiting their homes have a pass.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Wilder. And we have Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. So, okay, so let's go into parts. So one of the concerns that I've heard the most too is like, oh, I have a dock and people come visit me at my dock, and there's a group of people that is coming to visit today. So the best solution that I've seen some residents already doing that I thought it was a great idea. And two things you can, for those people, if I had a dock on Bedwell Bay, which I don't, but if I did, and I would need guests to come in and use my dock with me, what I would do, I would install a lockbox, give them the coach that lockbox, and have all my passes there, so I wouldn't have to go back home and then come back to the dock. The other thing I would do, I would put a little sign at the gate of the dock, not just for myself, but for my guests, saying, do you have your pass? Did you leave your pass at the windshield? So that would be just sort of that reminder that it will help you to remember to put those passes, so you don't run the risk of getting your guests, having a ticket when you come out of a fun day at the boat. As far as big events goes, the village already accommodates those. So if you're going to have a big event or a big wedding, then what you do, you call the village, you let them know what's happening, and the village always done a great job accommodating those big events. So you can park at the village hall, but as long as staff is aware of what you're doing, then that they can help you out. The intention here was never through policies like that to hurt residents. The intention here was really to try to control a little bit of the problems that we've been seeing for so long. I was not in favor of a policy like this, but with so many things changing and having to pay parking all over here, and Alberta Lake and doing what they're doing, it makes sense. I see that there's a lot of support, even though it's not 100% support around the community for permit parking only, but we do have, seems at this point, a majority of support. So yeah, the thing is, if that's what majority of the residents want, then the only way that we can accomplish this is through those permits and passes. And we need to remember to put those permits and passes there. And I have to say, I do agree with Councillor Drake's comment on, because the intention is not to hurt residents. It's, if a person forgets a pass once, yeah, I would love to follow Councillor Drake's suggestion, but I do understand that this is up to staff too. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Clark and Councillor Snell. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. A couple of points of clarification on docks. Of course, I think every group wharf is cognizant of the difficulties in parking on Marine Avenue, and in the bylaws and constitution of each group wharf society, one is obliged to recognise that parking is a challenge down there, and it's not a right for a dock member to have free access to the parking on Marine Avenue. Of course, every dock has an uplander, and generally speaking, uplanders are always able to accommodate their own vehicles on their own property, so they don't become an issue. Anybody else, for instance, if I'm going down there with several guests, we will obviously try and do some carpooling. The guest passes, that if we have, for instance, 2 guest passes, that really, but even if my family will have 1 vehicle between us and we have 2 independent guests coming down, that's still one homeowner pass, if you like, and 2 guest permits, which would be 3 vehicles down there, which could be termed excessive. So I think that should be kept in mind, when you're issuing the number of passes. The other quick point I would mention, if one has a basic allocation of passes and expected to pay a little bit extra for a few more, you don't have to go back very many years before one to remember that those little green decals that a lot of people have got stuck in the inside of their windshield, which identified them as a resident of Belcarra and was very useful when the police stopped you in the middle of the road when driving into the village. Those used to cost $10 each, period. All right, $5 each then, but that still used to cost. It's still used to cost. So I don't think people really mind, contributing a little bit. Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay. So I'll note right now, we've had good conversation. We are at 7:58. So we can continue to have it, but we may be at the point where we can start to kind of chart something out, but I'll leave it to our 2 council leads on that. Make sense?
So Mayor Ross, if I may, so 2 things we need to decide here before I read the motions again to go to voting and moving and seconding. Do we want, and I would like to hear from the other councillors so I have a sense in the room, do we want expiration then on all the gas passes, but not the stickers? Would that be a fair assumption? Or do we want to go with no expiring date as per Dennis back feedback to begin and then go from there, try to work from there? What would be, Councillor Drake? Yeah,
I'm uncomfortable with having no expiration date and no apparent limit on the number of guest passes that can be requested. So maybe there's a compromise there somewhere. If we're, I don't mind the chief administrative officer having the authority to override, a given number, but I don't think our administration should question a request, for example, for 3 guest passes. I just say, look, you can have the first 3. After that, it's at the discretion of the CAO. Any event, it's in there somewhere. If you want to get my vote, you'd have to find some compromise between those 2 positions.
Okay, so Councillor Drake, note to the expired date and worries about quantity of. I should make a comment on this about the passes number. There has been specific, very specific situations that a resident has that they would need more passes, and it has been provided by the village in the past. That's what I learned today with staff at Village Hall. So if we can continue that, then that would just be something that we're already doing it. So Councillor Wilder, what do you think about expiry date for the guest passes? And,
well, at this point, today, and this can be revisited, I don't think there should be. I think we should just keep things status quo, honest to God, I do. And I think that if somebody has an issue, as I know that there was a particular resident that needed more, and they argued the case to the CAO and successfully. And I just, gosh, I'm not really
You're on
saying
the
this really well.
expiry date, right? The expiry
They
date
were not
for the gas
expiry
passes.
dates. No, they weren't expiry dates, because I
Okay.
think if they're expiry dates, I'm on two hands with this one. On one, if it's an expiry date, then that's more staff time, staff cost, which I'm not really in favor of. On the other hand, I think we're all responsible adults here. We're not very many homes, right? We're not that very many homes here. So really, for less than 300 homes, we need to spend all this money with staff time to deal with parking passes? It's like, if I need 2, if I need 3, if I need 4, for whatever reason, if I'm having a party, I will tell them and I will say, hey,
So,
can I use the village hall to park my excess
so
guests?
we're talking about expiry date of the gas passes right now. So you're talking about
I'm
quantity of
not
passes,
really
or-
in favor of expiry dates on the guest passes.
Okay, so no expiry date. No expiry date for Lisa, okay.
No, I don't think so. I've lost a
Okay.
pass. I'm gonna go to the CAO and I'm gonna say, pass number blah, blah, which I know the number. My son went to Alberta with it. And can you cancel that and give me another one in exchange?
Okay, so no true expiry date. As far as number of passes go, are you okay to keep status quo, which would be deferring this back to staff, which is, it's pretty much what Bruce was suggesting.
Well, actually,
here.
I'm not really sure, because staff has told some people, no, you can't have any. They went from 0 to some people could only have 2.
Yeah.
And where did that number come from? I don't know where that number comes from. If I need, because I don't have a driveway, I particularly do, but someone else doesn't have a driveway. If they need 4 or 3, I don't think there should be that limit on there.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay, because what he reads right now is that we're not really putting a number, but we're sort of saying
Visitor
here that-
passes. I'm reading it here. Question: how many are allowed now? 6 or 4? Question mark. I believe the property should be about 2, 4,
No.
6 if we wish.
It would be on the, okay, that would be on the motions, on the latest motions that you got later in the day today. So what we're talking about here is gas parking permits to be issued to owners and residents as required for use
As
by their
required.
guests.
And let an owner
So then it's
explain to
kind
the
of
CAO why they need 4, why they need 3, why they need 2.
Okay.
But then you need to have the wording at the discretion of the CAO.
At the discretion of the CAO.
You have that wording in the policy.
We already have.
It's already highlighted in the policy.
But
in
the problem with
traffic
that
and
now
parking.
is the CAO has
Yeah.
not issued passes to people that actually need passes.
Yeah. Mhm.
0. Issued 0 passes to somebody that needed a pass.
Yeah.
And why was that?
Mhm. So I guess councillors now, I'll leave it to Mayor Ross to call the next speaker, but I haven't heard still from councillors now, I would say, and Mayor Ross on their thoughts on that.
I've got Councillor Snell, and then I'd be
Okay.
pleased to add.
Thank you, Mayor Ross.
Yeah, hello, thank you. I'm comfortable having an expiry date on it. I am very confident that our CAO understands the problem and is quite able to put the necessary wording in there to cope with these strange circumstances, as in fact he pointed out many minutes ago. But I think more importantly, we should really move on and get this thing happening.
Yeah.
And maybe fine tune it down the road. But I do have confidence in our acting CAO to interpret what's needed, and as simple as that. And I don't think one can get hung up on an expiry or not. I think it makes sense to have expiry dates, just because if you don't, you're going to end up with more permits in circulation, than you do have legitimate uses. So I will, but I really do want it to move on.
Okay, so yes to expiry date for councillors now, yes to Councillor Drake, and now we have to hear from Mayor Ross.
Okay, and then I wouldn't mind when we finished, rather than
Yes.
moving on, if we could also go to the audience, because we've,
Yes.
council, there's been lots
Yeah.
of discussion so far.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
we want to move into that at some point. So I would say this, when I look at the piece right now, and I don't feel strongly about this, but I look at the piece that if right now, if we weren't to have an expiry date and we just go forward, and if we give instructions or leave it with the acting chief administrative officer or our chief administrative officer to work with people in terms of getting passes for them. And, essentially we would trust that they would be reasonable. So if there are guest passes, someone comes in and says, I need this. And then at some point, if we believe on council, after talking with either of the chief administrative officers, that it's not making sense, then we can go back in and apply some limits. Because I think there's an element right here of trust. There's an element of wanting it to be not too convoluted. And I would say that we can get too many passes out there, but I've been keeping tally right now. We've got a lot of passes in Alberta. We've got a lot of passes that our contractors take and go. I know that I've heard just asides from people saying, I had these people come in and do great work. The only thing they didn't do is give my passes back. So I just think allowing it to run for a while. And then if we feel that we need to apply something, then we go look at it. But this won't be the hill that I would.
So just to make it clear, Mayor Ross, you
Yep.
would say, it would be fair to say then, in your view, you would not need an expiry date at this moment. Is that
At
correct?
this moment, and
At this
unless we have an issue.
Okay,
and
okay.
guest passes to staff would just be done by the chief administrative officer, either one of them. And council would always hold that policy piece at the end. Okay, so thank
And
you.
as far as number of passes, do you have feedback on that, or would you leave it up to the CAO?
Well, my belief would be to leave it up to either the CEOs to make sure that I think people need different passes for different reasons.
Yeah.
Right? I can't see going and asking for a lot, but I think other people would, and I think that's fair. Does that help you out, Councillor Clark?
It does. Thank you, Mayor Ross. Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll go to the audience, I guess, and now sit tight and write
Okay.
my notes.
So, okay, thank you. And I've got Sherry Chisholm, I believe. And then I've got Joe Elworthy. Sherry?
Yeah, hi. It
Hello.
seems to me maybe one of the things we could do to ensure that passes didn't get lost and there wasn't too many out there, workmen have to come to you to be paid or send you an invoice. And so you refuse to pay them till they mail back the pass. And the other thing is, with our fobs for the entry to the recycle depot facility, if you lose that tab, you have to pay quite a bit to get a new one. So maybe you can get as many passes as you want for some nominal fee. I think the fobs are about $20 or $30. So maybe you need to make it $10 or $15, and then you kind of become more responsible about getting the pass back or whatever. Maybe that would help. I certainly would support the idea of an expiry date. And I think a colored change each year makes it easier for our bylaw, ticket girl to recognize quickly that you're not in date. I mean, if we're going to control parking, it's going to take some administrative time, and otherwise, we go back to the old days, throw it wide open. So those are my comments. But I do believe paying for these passes will better control the homeowners with them. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Appreciate that. Joe, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, and interesting as always. My view is that, and I'm listening to all of the passionate concerns, and everyone want to do the right thing, but it seems to me that the number can be dealt with. I think that the expiry date is important. I'm not going to suggest it's 2 years or colored for each year, because that would only convolute the decision you already have to make. I think that I would be confident that the expiry date takes care of the numbers, quite frankly, because once it expires, your numbers are gone and you have to go back, and presumably staff would deal with it. So I would be strongly urging the expiry date. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. I'm not seeing anybody else in the audience, so I'm going to call once, twice, 3 times. And I'm going to bring it back to council, and I'm going to go to Councillor Clark and or Councillor Wilder. Do you want to chart some things out, Councillor Clark, or?
You're muted.
Oh, Carolina, you're muted.
Sorry.
I'm gonna refer back to you first, or defer to you first.
Okay, well, I walked in here thinking perhaps expiry date wouldn't be the best because of the extra amount of work to staff. Listening to Danny's feedback too makes me lean a bit more towards that way, but I do understand the concerns. You know, my sense is we don't have to solve every single problem tonight. Let's put it that way. We can choose one way and go with that for a while, see how that works. I guess there's no right and wrong answer here. I guess only time will tell based on where we choose today. Only time will tell what is going to happen tomorrow. So you know, right now I can go with the expire, with no the expire. As far as numbers goes, if we are telling staff, look, we want people to have the passes that they need, then, you know, then that's the feedback we're giving them right now. I don't necessarily think we need a motion at this point with all the concerns on the survey. The staff can see that is one of the concerns. They, you know, some people just don't have enough passes. So I think that's being very well said here today. So yeah, I guess, you know, I'm ready to vote if someone moves the motion, but I'll pass to Councillor Wilder for her comments as well. Thank you. So
Oh my God, you know what? I'm going to, I think I'm just going to defer back to your emotions, Councillor Clark. I will. And I think we can revisit this. We just can, right? We can just revisit it. This is another extension of our parking survey, our parking problems. I know somebody said in one of the surveys, I had a laugh when I looked at read all the comments, and some of them were quite funny. And one was like, oh my God, are we still talking about this? Well, of course we are. We're trying to get to the end of it. So it was really quite funny. There were some really, really good comments. I read them all. I read them all, as we all do. I keep telling you guys that we read all your letters, we read your emails, we read all your survey results. I'll stand fast on Councillor Clark's recommendations tonight.
And is that recommendation with the item B being separated?
Yes.
So he gives no, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes, yes, with that correction. Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so
thank
no
you very
expiry.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, no expiry. Yeah.
Okay.
It isn't
thank
clear
you.
to me. Sorry, under B becomes what?
It becomes it separates. So there is no expiry for the guest passes, but there is an expiry for the tradesperson passes.
The trades will be an annual pass.
Yeah, as for the guests will be, for now, will be no expiry for now. Like any council can change this anytime, really. And those remind you, it's guidelines, right?
It's you know, it's another test. It's another step forward, another test.
Yeah.
So,
And then councillors now has his hand up.
yeah, I'm just going to go to him. I just want to confirm with Councillor Drake. So the sentence was divided and produced those two things. But you got to make sense to you, or?
Well, thank you. I understand. Okay, so it's put in two parts. We're saying if you get a guest parking permit, which will be at the discretion of the CAO, it goes on forever. On the other hand, if I'm a guest, a tradesperson, then I get one that expires at the end of the calendar year.
That's
Yeah.
what that's what it is right now. But we've listened to Councillor Clark, we've listened to Councillor Wilder, now you, and I did want to go to Councillor Snell, who has patiently had his hand up, but I went to the two leads first. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mayor. Through the mayor, a question and a comment for Councillor Clark. It's interesting, we spent all this time talking about the permits for residents, yet really this whole issue came about because of the public using our streets to park at the, that we're using the trails and also the park itself. Now, and it begs the question is now that Belcarra South can move ahead with its development plans, part of which were, I believe, extra parking for park visitors. I think a lot of people would be interested to know exactly where we stand on that, because we suddenly might just get a huge increase in the amount of parking where it is now. And of course, that parking should be both for the park and for the trails across the street. So the problem might ease over time, but if you could just give us an update on that particular portion, thank you.
Sure. So Mayor Ross it's on Parks Committee now, but when I was there last year, the plan was it was to extend the parking lot where the cabins are. So there are plans for Belcarra Park, the picnic area there to be for the parking lots to be extended. And hopefully even, back when I was at the committee, and I'm not sure now, so I'll leave this to Mayor Ross to comment. They weren't just planning a parking lot there. They were also planning a parking lot around the entrance of Tantamilton there, the road. So yeah, but perhaps Mayor Ross will have some more clarity on that. But yeah, but that parking lot where Belcarra South is, where the cabins were, has been planned for a long time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. So I'd be pleased to add our Chief Administrative Officer, prior to going off, was engaged to have a staff-to-staff discussion to find out exactly where they were with the park development. Some of the things you've spoken about, and we now have Dennis back, who has arranged a meeting and will be going to have that staff-to-staff discussion and then coming back and sharing it. Make sense,
Perfect.
Dennis?
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know you were going to add that. That's why I put my hand up, is just to say that, and I don't have the date on the top of my mind offhand, but we do have a meeting scheduled. It was just scheduled last week with Metro Parks to go over a number of issues, including an update on their expansion plans.
I think the date's June 10th, but I won't put money on it or an expiry date on it.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilder.
I just wasn't sure how that question was related to this motion.
Oh, it's just to point out that perhaps the problems with parking will be less in the future because there will be more parking
Alleviated,
lots.
yeah.
Yeah, alleviated. Yeah. This is just a point so people know
Okay.
that this is happening. Yeah. So I guess we're ready. Can I ask to, I'm ready to call the question. I think we have exhausted this tonight if there's no more public speakers, and reminding everybody that we can always come back to it if we have to, and probably we will have to, because that's just the way it is with parking. That's the thing that people are the most passionate about when it comes to give feedback to council, is about parking. That's one thing. Nothing beats parking. That's what I learned in this year's year. Thank you.
So we've got clarity on where we ended up.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Dennis, you've got that too?
I do.
Okay, so thank you to our two council leads, Councillor Clark, Councillor Wilder.
Can I just ask if it's permitted to ask Dennis through the chair, just to reiterate the motion before we vote on it, because it's been discussed so much? Is that possible?
Yep, that's possible. Go ahead.
I can do that. Well, the motion is in two parts. The first part is as written in the report, and that is the report dated May 9th, 2022 regarding Village of Belcarra parking survey be received for information.
So oh, sorry, would you like to read everything or should I?
Worship, would you prefer to vote on them separately or together?
We can vote.
All together, Councillor Clark?
Sure. Yeah,
All
to me, that works.
Yeah, unless someone wants to ask for it to be done, Sarah Adam, but I think it makes sense to do it as a package, but
Yeah.
it's open for someone to ask, so.
Then I'll proceed then to read the second part of the motion as follows. That further to the authorities, plural, delegated to staff pursuant to Section 8 of the Village of Belcarra Traffic and Parking Regulation Bylaw number 518218. That should be 2018, pardon me.
Yep.
2018. The following guidelines be adopted to assist staff in managing the parking permit system. A, residential parking permits to be issued to owners/residents of property in Belcarra for each vehicle they have registered to a Belcarra address. B, guest parking permits to be issued to owners/residents as required for use by their guests. I'll call it B2 or B1, the second part of that, because we split the motion.
Yeah.
Guest parking permits to be issued to tradesmen with such permits to expire at the end of the calendar year, of the respective calendar year.
And we would substitute tradespeople, right?
Tradespeople,
Does that make sense?
it's more generic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nope, you're welcome.
Contractors and subcontractors to be issued temporary guest parking permits to accompany the traffic management plan they are required to submit with the building permit application, with such permits to be linked to a vehicle license plate number. And D, Coquitlam Search and Rescue personnel and Sasamat volunteer fire personnel to be permitted to park in residential parking zones based on vehicle identification plates without the addition of a guest parking permit. And E, utility companies to be eligible to acquire a guest parking permit for their use while working in the Village of Belcarra. And F, being the last part, licensed divers be permitted to acquire a guest parking permit subject to providing their diving license number along with their vehicle license plate number, period. I believe that the intention in earlier discussion though was that we were going to add an expiry date to that. It doesn't say this, but
Yeah,
is that, I think that was council.
that was
sentiment.
the intention. Yeah, because I think any permits provided to non-residents should have an expiry date, no doubt. Yeah.
So, okay, so then with such permit to expire at the end of the respective calendar year, added to the end of that clause.
For the divers, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Councillor Wilder, go ahead, please.
The only issue I have with the divers
Yep.
is that it mentioned, and please through the chair to Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned a diver's license, registering their license, their vehicle license. Wait a minute, I've got my friend who's a diver that I'm going with and he comes in my car. My car's not registered, so you know what I mean? It's like, I think just a
But-
driver's license.
You have a sticker. If she goes in your car, then it's fine because you have a sticker.
But he just mentioned driver's license number,
This is
the
for the-
vehicle license
is-
number. Sorry.
This would be
So what if a diver's coming here and he's in a friend's car? He's the diver, but he's not in his friend's car. You know what I'm saying?
He's
He
gonna have
only-
to come with
he
his
only
car.
needs to register the vehicle when he's getting the license. He can take the license in the friend's car later. Sorry, the permit. The permit is only issued when he gives a license, but he doesn't have to have the permit in that licensed vehicle.
That's what I want to make sure.
Well, no, the motion reads along with their vehicle license plate number. So it would be specific to one vehicle. And this is another thing too, because we don't want one person here giving a diving ID and getting a pass to put on his friend's vehicle who's not a diver. See, that's the kind of thing we got to think about when we're providing
Okay.
passes to non-residents.
So let me just thank you for that, Councillor Clark.
Mhm.
And at one point, but I don't know if he still wants to, but Dennis looked like he may want to enter in on this.
Yeah.
Nope.
People
all I
buy
was
and
gonna
sell
say
their
is that-
car, buy and sell cars.
Yeah, I understand the, what council is grappling with here, but this is all about parking permits. And if we're gonna give out, if somebody comes in to get a parking permit, we assume they got a vehicle. Otherwise, the person with the vehicle should be coming in. So if it's a parking permit for a vehicle that they own, then they get a permit that's tied to the car. If their friend wants to get their friend that's also a diver has a car, then he'll
Get
come
their
in
own
and get a
pass.
separate permit at no cost.
But I'm the one that has the parking, I'm the one that has the diving permit. My friend has a diving permit. One day I use my car, one day I use his car.
We'll give them both a permit.
Yeah.
Won't cost them an extra cent.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Just want to clarify.
Friends with diving
Anyone
permits.
towed or ticketed?
Friends with diving permits. I think we got that one resolved. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Dennis. And thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's the motion. So I'll move the motion. Or
I'll
we
second.
remove. Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have Councillor Clark moving, Councillor Snell seconding. Any
No.
further discussion?
No.
No,
Please,
no.
please, no.
Okay, hey, hang on. That's only a formality. If you don't respond back, we go quicker. So I'm now going to call the question. All those in favor, raise your
Yes.
hand.
Aye.
I note that it carries in the affirmative. Thank you very much. And we are now at 8:28 and we're moving on to, Connie, are we moving on till after this next one or did you want to do something now after? Okay. Make sense? Okay, thank you. So we're now moving on. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Thank you, Councillor Wilder. And we're moving on to 6.3, public road safety. So I'm going to ask Councillor Drake to provide an overview of his report pertaining to public road safety. Councillor Drake, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just want to say here, I'm only going to ask that this report be received for information, although there will be some motions I'll propose that flow from the content of the report. So what I'm not asking is that we all discuss in painful detail and come to a conclusion on all of the items I raised. I have raised them based on a concern that I believe there is a substantial amount of interest in safety, road safety in the village, understandably. And notwithstanding the fact that council is not interested in proceeding with the MUP, I do think there are some steps we can take that can contribute significantly to safety within the village. So if I might, I just cite a number of them and I will comment briefly on those. People can follow along within the report. With respect to Bedwell Bay Road itself, I think we really should be moving ahead to look at where the most dangerous parts of that road are located and determine what steps we can practically take to reduce the risk at the site. That was one of the factors I think pretty much we all agreed upon, notwithstanding the fact that we didn't agree on the scale of any work or development that would make sense for those given areas. And I note within that as well that this would have to be considered in terms of liability issues related to that. If council is agreeable, I'd like to just run through these and then we can come back to discussion on anything council wishes to raise. Traffic calming, I'd like to see us use a speed control device. I mentioned here, and I think with respect to raised crosswalks, that having spent some time at the village entrance working on displays at various times, I would suggest those who haven't walked the road recently, and I suspect I see David Warren's on, he certainly has, it is astounding the speeds that the occasional car comes through at. As a minimum, I would like to ensure that we provide people with their speed as they approach the village, because it's quite natural to be moving at quite a clip when you're just moving past the park and the lake. It would be worthwhile, in my opinion, to have people reminded of the speed they're traveling and the 50-kilometer-hour speed limit in the village maximum as they enter the village. Under item C, with respect to raised crosswalks, I'm not talking speed control bumps here. I'm not talking bumps of the scale that Anmore has, which are quite notable. What I am talking about is raising an inch, perhaps an inch and a half over the crosswalk sections so that you register you are passing over a crosswalk. Now, again, this will require some discussion with TransLink, which I would suggest be done by staff if council's supportive, because I do know with respect to MRM roads, which Bedwell Bay is an MRN road, they have some limitations on what they are prepared to entertain. It's also going to be controversial with some individuals, but I would suggest most controversial with people that are traveling far too quickly on our roads. And I would just as soon they be reminded they're on a road in which there are many walkers, and it's not a thoroughfare. Item D is flashing lights. This has to do with crosswalks, and people will see these next to, for example, the Anmore Elementary School. They're not large structures, but they do ensure at crosswalks that you are made aware that someone is in the crosswalk at the time you approach it. I think that's particularly relevant as you on Bedwell Bay Road near the Kelly Junction, for the simple reason it's not that visible if you're coming down the hill. The distraction to the north of one of the most scenic viewscapes in the probably on the planet, but it's exceptionally attractive on occasion. You can fail to pay attention as to who might be in a crosswalk as you come around the corner at the bottom. I think flashing lights would be very valuable. They're only going to be on when someone's actually in the crosswalk, which is a few times a day. And I think it would be a worthwhile investment. Here is one example, and I'll make it more broad, the statement. I would like to know if, with respect to this, certainly, and other proposals that are here, if council wishes to pursue them, whether we can secure support from TransLink. There may be some of these programs that they will be receptive to. There may be some, I raised the issue of raised crosswalks, they may not be receptive to, but I think we should explore that. Item E, I just mentioned additional crosswalks. There may be some coming forward from our OCP review as recommendations. So I simply think it's something council should consider, where we can limit people just randomly crossing the road. I think it improves safety within the village. Our roadside barriers, we've done some work on that. I think there are potentially a few additional areas we should look at. Again, I'm assuming TransLink might be prepared to support us in that. And I think the ones we've had have been a tremendous positive step for us. I know there were some few that were next on the in line in terms of recommendations when we had the study done. I'd like to look at those. And finally, the road shoulder width, which is simply a suggestion that when we do work on restoring or repaving a portion of road, council consider the incremental cost and practicality of adding some additional width, which is something I should note was done at the entrance to the village and does provide a section of road there where it is much safer either to walk or to ride a bike, frankly, along the side of the road that has been enlarged. So the areas where I'd like to see, one, I'd like staff to be asked to check with TransLink as to the feasibility of getting support with any of these council believed should be explored. Two, I'd like to make a motion specifically with respect to item G, the road shoulder width. And finally, the point I mentioned previously, that we determine from TransLink if there are limitations they place, restrictions they place on works taking place on MRN roads. And that's the report. Thank you. So I look forward to feedback. Again, I'm not asking for final decisions tonight. I just want to raise the topic and have these issues out there, and something that we are aware of as opportunities once staff have done some exploratory work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. Councillor Clark, go ahead, please, and then go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Russ. So I'd like to thank Councillor Drake for it's a great report. Just a few comments here. I really like item G, road shoulder width. That's what I was talking about last meeting too, that I totally agree with that. And yes, there has been some of these items that have been flagged by the OCP committee. And so it makes a lot of sense. You can see that feedback already coming from the OCP committee and groups that are working with those in those subjects. So it's pretty nice to see it, to see that coming through. I would like to see for those, if for to accomplish these motions, can we use some of the funds from the gas tax? That would be one of my questions when time comes. But great report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Snell, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I think Councillor Drake has done an outstanding job in really identifying not only the problem, but a number of areas where the problem can specifically be addressed. So I would be fully supportive of this motion and moving ahead, with getting staff working on accomplishing some of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Snell. Anybody else on council? Not seeing anybody right now. We'll go to Sherry Chisholm, please.
It's Jim Chisholm.
Hello, it's Jim.
Hello, Jim.
Yeah. With regards to speed bumps, that's an absolute no-no. That at any speed, nobody's going to like them, and the fire department will hate you for them. But with regards to the flashing lights, that I think you're speaking of the ones, Bruce, that where you come to the edge of the road, they press the button and it flashes on either side and go across.
The pedestrian.
The pedestrian ones, are you speaking of those?
That's correct, Jim. Similar to the ones you'd see up at the Anmore School.
Okay, those things are good and bad. In many cases, I've been by many and many of them, and many of the joggers or people are walking along the street, come running down there, and they go right by the switch, punch them out, and they're in the traffic before the light even is on. So be cautious about that. I would highly recommend, though, in place of that, because nighttime thing, I'd put street lights at the crosswalks. For nighttime, and that would be much more, we'll get more bang for our money. There'll be less money than any other ones. I wouldn't be at all surprised if those flashing light things are at least $8,000 to $10,000 a crossing. So that's my comment, because it's just simpler to do.
If I may, through the chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. That's exactly the kind of feedback I'm looking for at this point. These are conceptual ideas. And I've banged on about the issue of speed bumps numerous times. And I have a suspicion that TransLink's going to be uncomfortable with that anyway, but I'd like to look at them. Secondly, your point, certainly we should compare the cost against that of lighting. Mind you, I don't know how neighbors will feel. I mean, these will take a while to work through. The beauty of flashing lights is they're only on for a few seconds and before they're off. And as the joggers running into traffic, well, it's not a very wise way to cross a road.
But I've seen it too often, and so on and so forth. And then the speed bumps, if people don't recognize, I think some of the ones you're suggesting are the very ones that are on the interior of these shopping centers in their parking garages. And boy, oh boy, are they ever terrible. So I wouldn't get into those things, please. Thank you.
If I could suggest, I've been places where they do kind of a ribbed thing into the blacktop rather than raised. So you get this noise from your tires and you,
Oh, yeah,
it kind of
that's-
wakes you up.
That's
Anyways, that's just a thought.
the
A
thing
good
that
suggestion.
we're
Thank
talking
you.
about is the ones along the highways in some cases where if you drive off the road and edge, they wake you up.
It gives you a noise warning.
That's been very common. And
Yep.
that would not be too bad because I've seen that in here and of course even in the Hawaiian Islands a lot of the time, but
Okay.
in the States they're all over the place.
And so what you're talking about, Jim, the good and the bad is what actually happened in Port Moody down on Brewers Row. They actually had it set up so as soon as the lights went off, it allowed you to cross and people were going. So they went back and then they delayed it. So there's a delay because people
Well,
were
yes.
walking into traffic.
I'm not so sure if those other ones that we're speaking of have a delay button or not, but I just see people come flying into them and they're in front of me before the damn light starts.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I'm
And as,
a car length and a half away, you could barely stop.
Yep. No, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, both of you. And thank you, Councillor Drake. And I'm looking back at the list. I'm not seeing anyone on the list. So Councillor Drake?
Yes, I'm happy to leave it just as information now, but if we want a series of motions, and I'm looking carefully at Dennis on the screen in case he does wish motions, I'm happy to present 3 quick ones. More effective.
Oh, Dennis, you're muted.
Certainly, Council, you know, it's, these are your discussion, but if you want to give us some direction to take some immediate action on follow-up, as Councillor Drake has suggested, a motion will be certainly in order.
Okay, then I'll make an initial motion. I'll move that staff be asked to explore with TransLink to determine if any of these topics or others related to road safety could be supported by existing or new funds. I'll look for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So we've got Councillor Drake and Councillor Wilder. It's on the floor for discussion. So
No, I'm sorry, that's Councillor Clark, not Councillor Wilder.
Yeah, Councillor Clark seconded.
okay,
Correction.
that's not that it's better, but it's different. So thank you for grabbing that. Okay. So I think that this makes perfect sense. You know, that it's to explore with TransLink. And I think from the initial stages, we've had some very positive signals from them that if we came to the point where we wanted to do something on safety, regardless of what we were doing before, they initially said that they were quite supportive to making it happen. So I think this is a good motion and I'm certainly in support of it. Okay. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll look to call the question on that. All those in favor say aye.
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 And it carries in the affirmative. So thank you. And Councillor Drake, I believe you had a second one.
Yes, my second motion is I'll move that. Now you simply have to read G, the road shoulder width statement. So I'll move that as roadwork is undertaken in the village going forward, the feasibility and incremental cost of providing wider shoulders should be assessed.
Okay. So Councillor Drake moving that and Councillor.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm just going to go with Councillor Snell because I saw his hand up and then I heard your voice a nanosecond
Okay.
later. You can get in on the third one if you want, though. Okay. Councillor Drake, you want to lead off?
Well, this one I think is just makes common sense. It's not tasking us with a great deal, but I am very pleased with the initiative that was taken right at the entrance to the village at some incremental cost to widen the road there. It's a very positive opportunity for bikers particularly, but also hikers. Having walked that area now, it's a much safer location. At least it certainly feels safer.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further speakers? Not seeing any. I'll look to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And it carries in the affirmative. Okay, and Bruce, did you have a third one, I believe?
You know, at one point I thought I did, but I'm
Did?
quite satisfied that I'm fine now. And I just
Okay.
want to say, express my appreciation to the Chisholms. I think the ribbing idea is probably a very good one. So I'll just end with that. Thanks.
Okay, good.
Worship.
Okay, so we have,
Your worship, can I just have your attention? Councillor Drake, I believe, wants to move the first recommendation, that is to receive the report for information, because I don't believe that we've done that yet.
yeah. No, that's-
That's right. I indicated I was going to do that, Dennis, and then didn't do it. So there's
Yeah.
there's my third motion. I
Okay.
knew there was a third one there somewhere.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay, so you're moving the one that you spoke about, but you didn't move at the time.
Just the receipt of the report.
Yeah. Okay, and Counselor Drake and Counselor Clark. I told you there'd be a third one. So you're seconding us. Okay, it's on the table now for receipt. Just speak on receipt. Anybody on council? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience? And I'm not seeing any. So look to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 I note that it carries in the affirmative. Okay, and we are now at the official community plan. But we're gonna take a break now for 8 minutes, if we could, please. That'll allow some of our staff who's been at it for a little while. Okay, so thank you, and we'll be back in 8.
7, so 9. So 8:56.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Okay, everybody, welcome back, and we're almost at the time, so give another 10 seconds and then we'll start, and we'll be on item 6.4. Okay, so we have item 6.4, the official community plan OCP review committee minutes, and we'll look for someone to move it and second it. Councillor
So moved.
Clark moving, Councillor Snell seconding it. It's on the floor for discussion. And the motion is that the official community plan review committee minutes from the meeting held on March 2nd, 2022 be received for information. Any discussion from council? Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Just a little reminder. So we got the OCP committee doing its work, and we're going to have a couple of meetings in June. There will be another open house for public feedback on the OCP draft that we're going to come up with. So please, everybody, sign up for it. You're going to see the notices coming at the bus stop, as well as the village email, as well as the village website, and also on your mailbox. So this time we hope to get more people there to give us feedback. OCP, again, is an important document. We want as much feedback as we can get. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wilder.
I'm not sure if I just missed this. Thank you through the chair, Carolina Clark, Councillor Clark. The OCP open house is on May 25. I'm not sure if she actually mentioned the date. May 25 at 6 p.m.
I don't have it in front of me, so that's why I didn't mention, but I would ask
I have it on my
Dennis
calendar.
if that's correct. Yeah, that is correct.
Okay,
We
I
got a
just want
nod.
to make sure that everybody knows that.
Thank you.
And then the link will be on the website. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other comments from council? Seeing none. Looking at the audience, I'm not seeing anybody, so we'll return to council. And not seeing any other speakers, I'll look to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. And it carries, the ayes carry in the affirmative. Okay, so we're now on the report from our acting chief administrative officer. Dennis, if you'd like to provide your verbal report, please.
Certainly, your worship. All of a sudden I've misplaced, oh, there we are.
Take your time.
Well, there are only two items, your worship. And these are just decisions that were made this evening at a closed meeting earlier this evening. And there was a motion of council in both cases to release these decisions to the public. Firstly, there was a water report that was done by an engineering firm, WSP, and it's a report on the supply capacity of the submarine lines that come over from North Vancouver. And that report has been received by council, and council has now agreed to release that report publicly, and it'll be going up on our website. And the second item is related to a contract that is being awarded to VA Blackwell, and they are going to do, they're the company that did the first part of our Fire Smart study, and further contract in the amount of $22,513 has been awarded to the same company to do subsequent work. And that decision was made this evening, and that decision is now being made public. That's it, your worship. I have nothing else to report.
Councillor Drake.
Thank you very much. Could I just ask through the chair?
Yes.
If our CAO can tell us where the report will appear and when you expect it to appear for public review?
It'll be on our web tomorrow, and I can't give you a specific answer as to where on the web, but we'll make it as prominent as possible. I know you're concerned that it gets buried and no one will ever see it, but we'll make it prominent on the homepage.
That's great. Thank you very much.
And I have nothing else to report. I'm finished.
Okay. Okay.
Mayor Russ,
Yes.
may I?
go
Perhaps
ahead.
we should say where the funds are coming from, that it's from a grant from the $22,000, so it's clear to the community for the Blackwell contract.
Sure. Dennis, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure, so I can speak to that. The funding, 100% of the funding, $22,000, is coming from the provincial government program that funds. We had funding for our wildfire community resiliency plan, and then correspondingly, we're getting 100% funding for this additional work that includes education, staff training, developing development permit areas where building design and building materials are regulated, and also some initial mitigation work. So that is the work, and it'll be 100% provincial funding through grants.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes, Dennis.
It does.
Okay, thank you then. And we will move on, and we're on the fees and charges bylaw number 517, 2018 amendment bylaw. So
Excuse me, do we need to move to accept the verbal report?
go ahead, Dennis.
I think, Your Worship, it's just reporting out. I don't know that a motion is required, but if you, if that's council's wish, it also, it doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
It's more just for information, Your Worship.
yeah. So we don't usually do that when we hear a verbal report, but Dennis has talked about the release of the decision and stuff. So we'll move from there unless anybody feels strongly about it.
But it should go in the minutes, shouldn't it? That release of information.
It'll be recorded.
Okay.
A motion, I don't believe, is required.
Okay.
You right there, Councillor Snell?
Sure.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're on fees and charges bylaw number 517, 2018 amendment bylaw number 596, 2021. So it is in front of us to be adopted by council on this day, May 9th. So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Councillor Clark, Councillor Wilder, it's on the table for discussion. Anybody want to lead off on that, or Councillor Drake?
Just briefly, I just want to say, I appreciate the effort that's been put into this. I still made a trifle nervous by the distinction between connected and not connected, but I understand we're going to make progress on the sprinkler issue that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm quite happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Drake. Any other speakers to that? All right, seeing none, I'll look to call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I know
Aye.
that it carries, the ayes carry in the affirmative. Okay. So we're now on to Waterworks bylaw number 456, 2012 amendment bylaw number 600, 2022. So if we get someone to
I'll move it. Second.
okay, Councillor Wilder moving, thank you. Councillor Clark seconding it. Okay, and either of you want to open up for discussion?
No, I'm good with everything that's on here already. We've discussed this many times before, back on April 25.
Okay.
So I'm happy with the motion as it is here.
Okay, so not seeing any other speakers on council, we'll look to go out to the community, and I don't see any there, so we'll come back. And I'll look to call the question. All those in favor of this being adopted by
Aye.
council on May 9th,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
And I note that it's the ayes carry it in the affirmative. Okay, so thank you. And
Thank you for your work on this.
yeah. And bylaw number 599, 2022, a bylaw to set tax rates for the year 2022 to be adopted by council on May the 9th. So a mover, Councillor Drake, and a seconder, Councillor
I'll second.
Clark. Thank you. Any discussion on this from either of you or anyone on council? Not seeing any, I will look to go to the audience. I'm not seeing anybody with the audience, so we'll come back to council and I'll look to call the question. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
the ayes carry in the affirmative. So thank you for that. And we have a motion to receive the correspondence.
So moved.
Okay, seconded.
So seconded.
Okay, so that was Councillor Clark moving and Councillor Wilder seconding. Okay, good. All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
Would you
that's
ask
fine.
for
Yeah,
some?
no, anybody like to speak? I'm fine. Sorry, I was receiving a message and go ahead.
Yes, so we have the correspondence.
Yes,
91 to 93.
yep.
Cheryl, thank you very much. She's not online here, but I'd like her to thank her for her email, for her late email that regarding parking. And I was very thankful that staff actually included her email in the correspondence on that. And secondly, there is a correspondence from Sherry Chisholm. Thank you, Sherry, as always. But I have one personal comment to make about this one. It's
Yep, go ahead.
not a criticism or anything. It's just that I respect everybody's emails, letters coming in or what have you. And I read through it and I always thank you for your correspondence. But I just want to say, personally, this is just me. You made references to the mayor bullying council. I personally did not feel like I was ever bullied by my mayor. I just felt like we were debating, and I just want to put that on the table. That's all I have to say about that. I respect your letter and I thank you for it, but I just want my own personal opinion that I never ever thought that my mayor was bullying me. And that's all I really have to say about that. I just thought it was a great debate. So thank you for your, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And let me go to, and sorry, I did move quickly and I'll explain later. So thank you, Lisa, I received communication and I will deal with that in a second. But I would like now to go to Sherry Chisholm. If you please feel free to speak.
Hi, I'm very pleased that Lisa didn't feel bullied. Maybe intimidated would have been a better, kinder way of
Nope,
saying it. But if
didn't.
you didn't feel that way, that's great.
Did not.
I felt it appeared that way to me. And if it didn't to you, that's perfectly fine. But
Yeah.
I did hope that my letter covered other subjects, and I just wanted to get out there. And that was the reason for my letter.
I totally, through the chair, if I can, I totally
Okay.
appreciate that. And I appreciate everything that you said, and whether it's whatever words we use or whatever. I just always appreciate you writing into council and expressing your concern as a concerned citizen. Seriously. So
Good.
I was never intimidated and I was never bullied. I just thought we were having a great debate and I appreciate our mayor. do.
I appreciate him too, but I'm not going to talk sort of in my living room. It appeared a way to me and I wanted to get that out there. So I
Yeah.
do. So thank you.
Good. And so we have it on the table, how I felt. And
Yeah.
I've not even spoken to Mayor Ross about this. So I just want you to know how I felt.
Good. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for your comments.
thank you. And if I could also have a response, and Sherry, I would like to thank you for writing the letter and expressing your views. And I appreciate that. And I'm not too sure I'm in agreement with you on the content, but I would like to say I'm certainly in agreement with you having the right to be able to send a letter like that and hopefully me receive it in a way that doesn't react to it. Okay. So, and you know, I've known you for years and I've known you to always speak up and speak from your heart. I believe you were doing it on that day. So thank you. Councillor Clark.
Hi. I would like to make one comment about the item 9.3. We're looking for volunteers. So if anybody it's interested, costing of National Nutritious Food Basket in British Columbia in person, volunteer opportunity. So please take a look. And one thing, I'm not gonna get into this. I already spoke to Sherry what I think about the letter. So, but I will say that I'm thankful to see this letter on the agenda, because because I think it's important that that when we have someone that disagrees with us, that we put in it, as long as it's not disrespectful. I would say. I mean, I'm thankful to see this in the agenda, so we can have those conversations. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And thank you for your comments on the letter, but also thank you for the comments on the nutritious food basket. Very important piece right now, given what everybody's going through. So I think we are now at the question period, correct? But before we go in,
I think we have new business, do we?
oh, right, sorry, my apologies. I've got a shorter agenda here. So thank you,
New
Councillor
business.
Snell. New business.
Yes.
Go ahead. Anybody on council with new business? Councillor Drake.
Great. Councillor Drake, you're muted.
And your hand's up.
Yes, okay, no, it wasn't an
Okay.
accident, my hand was up.
Okay.
Just a flag and relate to an exchange of messages we had. I guess a question through to the chair, to Dennis. I thought we did have a discussion about the opening of the hall in terms of the lower office area that we had intended to report out. I'm not sure we've done that yet. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the message I received. So my apology for, I missed you, Lisa, because I had sent a message and received the response. So, but Dennis, does that make sense to you?
Worship, yes, and I apologize.
No,
I
no
wrote
apology.
it down, I wrote it on my sheet, but I wrote it in a place that I missed it.
That's okay.
There's a third item. We did discuss at our in-camera or closed meeting tonight, the notion of reopening the village office to the public, and up to now, I'm not quite sure, even it probably closed back in 2020, like most other places did. And we've remained closed a little bit longer than some other communities, just because of the nature of Belcarra and the wishes of our, what we perceive our citizens to feel. Anyway, we feel now that our council does, that they've reached the point where it's time to open the office for business as usual. We've been accommodating the public up till now, but in a particular way, whereas the doors are still locked. We're going to open the doors to the public. So council has decreed that the office will be open immediately starting tomorrow. to the public, and there'll be protective shielding up at the counter, which has been there for a while. And so the precautionary measures have been taken, and we're gradually reopening following the COVID lockdown, and we're starting with the village office. So that'll be starting tomorrow, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much, and no worries about that. Thank you. So
Thanks for the reminder, by the way.
no, that's okay. I felt bad because I questioned, I sent a message out saying, did I miss something? And Councillor Drake said, as always, you did miss something. So no, he didn't say that. But so I think we're now safe to go to the question period. So we will start off with questions pertaining to items on the agenda. And then once we've gone through there, we can look at if there's any items not on the agenda. Okay, and I see we have Sherry.
Jim Chisholm.
It's Jim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
with regards to the Brackwell Court report,
Yes.
it's very interesting. I see they have a building design category there. Surely that's where we can get our opening for getting sprinklers as mandatory in all the buildings in the future. How about that, Bruce? And they should play, they got $500,000 to work with.
Well, it's certainly something we can suggest to the consultant. Whether he'll come back recommending that is something we ought to pursue is another matter. But yeah, I have no objection. I think you and I have talked about this numerous times, Jim, and
Well, I didn't,
anything we can do to improve safety here from fire point of view is desirable.
absolutely. And I just thought that if they do have this building design category, there's no excuse not to discuss it. Because that's coming into, I presume they're talking about cladding and various other things for fireproofing outside and inside and things like that, which is going to be part of the code eventually, I presume. So anyways, that's my report.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, good. I was watching your hand to see if you wanted to speak, Sherry, but it came down. So that's good. Okay, so looking around, and thank you, Jim, for that. And Bruce, you've got your directions now, right? I saw the part he was referring to. So any other questions that we have? Okay. Not seeing any. It is in order that someone would look to move adjournment at.
So moved at 9:19 p.m.
And a seconder.
Second.
Okay, so Wilder and Clark and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and the ayes carry it. And thank you very much.
Wow,
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
this is
Yeah,
great.
thanks to everybody, and
night.
thanks for the important work done tonight by
I want-
our council and by our audience. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks staff and
Night,
audience.
all.
Yeah,
Bye, everybody. Thanks for the email, David Warren.
Thanks,
Night.
everybody.